Okay, the recording should be good. Say something so that I know that you're being picked up.
No.
Okay, that's good enough. All right, so
Yeah.
today we are talking about Deep Space Nine. I know, it's pretty novel for us to do this, but we're talking about
Who would have
episode
expected it?
7, which is Q-less.
Q-less.
Which, so this is the only episode that Q appears in for DS9.
Yep.
Obviously, he was a pretty hit character for TNG. He was still on TNG at this point in time because TNG was still running season 6 and 7.
Yep.
So I feel like this is. I remember feeling that this is like they're still trying to like transition people over from TNG to DS9.
hmm
So that's why they brought
hmm
in some like plot lines from TNG with those two Klingon women. That's why they have like a lot of
Yeah.
these sort of one-off episodes that don't really do too much. And that's why we have like Q appear because it's like, hey guys who liked TNG, we're doing something a little bit different from the normal Star Trek. So we're gonna sort of ease you into it. And that kind of feels like what they're doing a lot this season. And that's what it always felt like
Yeah,
to
but the
me
thing,
when you go on.
so they're trying to do that, but think I'm already going to go ahead and say I don't think they do it well with Q here because, so in
Yeah, there's a
TNG,
lot of weirdness in this episode, but go on with what you were saying.
yeah, kind of the best stuff for Q and TNG is when he's dealing like it's some sort of philosophical thing or like some groundbreaking thing, like Borg and such. Here it's just like it's not gonna be that. It's really not, folks. And like, I like sorry to be a downer about this episode already, but it's just like
No, I
I
mean like
don't think this is a good show for you.
we've been critical a lot of episodes. I don't think like a lot of the episodes that I've given like C's to or skippables to. I don't think they're bad
hmm
episodes of TV. I just think like when we're talking about the greater like content that DS9 comes to offer, it ends
hmm
up being that these are relatively weak episodes. And that's why I think a lot of people give
Yeah,
season 1. Season 1 is oftentimes given a pretty bad rap by DS9 fans because of this.
yeah,
This is there. Like, let's be fair. People give the first 2 seasons of TNG the same rap, right? Where it's like, yeah, those are the seasons that aren't great. Season 3 is where people say TNG picks up, and I don't
yeah,
disagree. There's some good episodes in season 1 and 2, but for the most part, it's kind of like trying to find its footing. DS9 is not immune
hmm
to that. It's like we got
hmm
the episode Tosk or the episode Captive Pursuit. I always just call that episode Tosk, but it's like I don't think it's a bad episode. I also think it's kind of like this feels very skippable in a lot of ways. Well, I mean, like we have our discussion about how we feel like they borrowed a lot of ideas going from there, so
yeah.
I don't think it's fully skippable. But there's that element of there is something missing from these some of these early episodes that later DS9 episodes managed to capture very well. And I just realized I got to fix something in the. There we go. That's fine. I just had to fix some of the stuff on
Last
the
minute
recording.
fixing. He took 20 minutes before this to fix
Okay,
everything. Yeah, he still has.
so you can bully me all you want, but I look. I'm still learning all this stuff. But I'm using
I
OBS,
understand. You're
and I don't.
slaving
Well,
over a hot stove
I'm
of
hold on.
production.
There's actually a problem I've had before. This is remember when one time we had to do like a recording because I screwed up this way. So OBS is like the studio function, and you'll have like the
hmm
working window and then the visual window, and it actually works very well. But if you don't hit that transition button, the thing that's
hmm
in the working window don't appear on the actual recording. So I had
Okay,
like
so
resized the video and resized certain things on the screen, and I realized, wait a minute, that didn't translate over. So like it's all just lopsided and ugly looking. I mean, it's still ugly looking, but now it's ugly looking the way I want it to look. So
yeah, the our aesthetic style. Yeah, yeah.
exactly our aesthetic of low effort and appearing low effort, but also actually being low effort. So anyway, back to like what we were kind of talking about. With DS9, it feels like it's definitely trying to shake the shackles of a lot of what Star Trek was. And again, I'm not saying that's like, oh,
Mhm.
what Star Trek was a bad thing, but it's like even with this Q episode, this is the only Q episode, and they kind of even have some like tongue-in-cheek poking fun at it. I
Yeah.
guess it's a bit of a spoiler when Picard and Q were this duo, right? They were the wacky zany god and the philosophical human, and there would be
Yeah.
these actual like dialogues and conflicts of point of view, and Q would be challenging Picard's point of view, and Picard would be poking back at how Q behaves. And that
Hmm.
was the interest in it, right? It'd be like some sort of
Yeah.
like old dialogue that you'd see where it's like someone's actually like debating with a higher power, and
Yeah,
it's
it's
like, yeah,
basically
you
a
don't.
Socratic dialogue where it's
Well,
like
yeah,
Q's
it's a
whole
dialogue,
thing
but
is
yeah, go on.
sorry. Well, Q is trying like remember like this is a running theme with the Q in general. They're trying to test humanity and like the sort of theory is like they think humanity will eventually become like them and they're trying to shepherd that along so they don't become an evil them. And it's like
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, like, I'm always kind of confused with what the Q are kind of about. Like, that's what Q says, but at the same time, Q says a lot of things, and how he behaves sometimes doesn't feel like it reflects that. But anyway, here it's very different. Like Cisco, like is one thing I do like, and we'll get to it. Cisco and all of Starfleet is fully aware of what Q is, who he is, how he behaves, and what he's going to be doing.
Problem. He's a
Yes,
problem.
and obviously, being a commander, Cisco is fully aware of this. He hears the Q's on the station. He wants him off. And Q makes like this joke of like, aha, you're gonna get rough with me, buddy, and he makes like a boxing ring for the two, and it's all silly.
Yeah.
And then
So brutal.
Cisco punches Q in the face. Q falls to the ground. He's like stunned. It's like, well, Picard never hit me, and Cisco's just like,
No,
I'm not
Picard.
Picard. And again, it's like
No,
that
no.
like tongue
What's
in
even
cheek.
better about it is, in character, Cisco took like 3 punches from Q, and Q's, obviously holding back. But it's still like, oh, I'm sure those were still good mini whacks. Cisco took them and then just fucking popped his ass on the, just flat out gone. Just like, mm, just,
Yeah,
Cisco.
so like, I mean, we'll get to that scene when we get to the scene, but it's funny. It's Q doing his normal thing, and he kind of realizes he's dealing with someone very different from Picard, uh,
Yeah.
and in a way, he's not happy with that. So he's
Yeah, he's
not
not
like, because
dealing
he
with
says like you're
someone.
easier. Well, you're not as easy to provoke, and I think this is doing like something on two levels. There's the meta level, which is again, this is like the show saying, yes, Cisco's not Picard. Like,
Mhm.
at this point you'd be dealing with like 6 years of TNG, and if you were a fan of Star Trek before that, you would have the years and movies of the original series. So now that you've gotten this new character, very different from the norm, they're like, look, we're trying to tell you he's different, guys. Okay, he's going to be
Mhm.
acting different. He's going to be behaving different, and that's going to result in some different outcomes. With Q, like, so Picard, I always kind of felt like Picard kind of enjoyed his experience with Q. There was this level of a real challenge.
It's fulfilling. Yeah, it's
Well,
fulfilling.
it's like think of many of the like philosophical questions that Picard is faced with. There's usually some sort of like actual threat. A planet's
Hmm.
falling apart. There's an enemy force invading, and you have to actually like answer some sort of deep,
You
meaningful
redo your
question.
life.
Well, it's like he has to be the
Yeah.
diplomat, and he has to argue about like, hey, we need to solve this maybe moral question or ethical question, or again, philosophical question of like, what does it mean, and all these things. Like, it's I like the episode, although it's incredibly silly and stupid. But from TNG, there's the episode where they go to the planet where every punishment for a crime is death.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Picard basically has to argue for Wesley's life. And it's like, okay, Picard probably like deep down enjoys the intellectual debate, but when someone's life is in danger, he's not going to enjoy that. Meanwhile, with
Hmm.
Q,
Hmm.
Q always like comes in, causes chaos, and then at the end of the day, he leaves things like equal to or even maybe slightly better than before. So it's almost kind of
Yeah.
like a game that like Picard is like, oh, I have to play this game today. I didn't want to do this today, but I feel like almost looking back on it, I always felt like Picard found value in that. It's almost like you
Yeah.
get to participate in these almost hypothetical life and death philosophical questions with a god, but in reality, like your crew's been fine. Uh, although I can't recall. So in TNG, I guess a light discussion of TNG on this DS9 review, but when they
What was Q? Like,
when Q threw them to the Borg, did anyone die?
no. That was him basically. No, wait, hang on. I think TNG episode where Borg were introduced. I remember, like, I could have sworn some people, like, were in, like, a. Yeah. So they are briefly immobilized by the Borg cube. They disable the shields and they use a cutting beam to slice the saucer section to remove a cross section, and it killed 18 people who were
Okay,
presumably
that changes a lot
yeah.
of how I always forget about that because the series doesn't seem to acknowledge that. Like, I get like if Q ever does this like high-minded thing, like Picard, I'm having this intellectual debate with you. It's like, dude, you killed 18 people. Like you threw us to the Borg knowing we weren't prepared, and 18 people died. Like, I feel like you would never forgive Q for that, and you wouldn't treat this as tongue in cheek. Like, but the
Yeah,
series kind of always
pretty
has.
much the and no, wait, Picard does blame Q for that. Like he basically
No, I'm
says
not. I'm
like,
not. I'm
yeah,
not saying he
thanks.
doesn't blame. I'm not saying he's. I was speaking a little bit to a more meta perspective. You know,
Hmm.
like I'm taking back what I said before. It's not like these are harmless situations. People do die. Most of the situations she throws them in are relatively harmless. But it's like
Hmm.
this element of now they don't really seem to acknowledge the fact that Q killed people. And like even with this episode, if you were told, "Hey, this powerful entity who killed 18, who is the direct result of 18 Starfleet officers being killed, is on the station," you don't play games with him. You don't
Yeah.
joke around. I'm not gonna lie. What you'd probably have to see is like actually these humans saying, "Hey, Q, can you please leave? I'm not gonna be rude about this, but we're not supposed to deal
Hmm.
with you." But they always treat him aggressively, and I'm like, you do realize that's not how that should be working. It's weird. It's
Mm.
very weird. I don't really. This is why I'm always a little bit hesitant when it comes to Q episodes. Is because I
Yeah.
don't know if they ever really treat Q the way he kind of is meant to be treated, and he doesn't seem to want to be treated the way he's meant to be treated, and it's always very confusing. It's like
Y-
I don't know if I can
Yeah.
really. And this episode's not much better. We were discussing it just before we started recording. This episode is very weird. This episode is very. I remember it's been a little bit since I watched this episode relatively recently. It's it's actually like the A and B plot have like nothing to do with one another until they're just collide in the end, and it's very
Hmm.
disjointed. Sorry, I have a bit of a cough still, but so I mean we could
Coffin.
probably get like into the actual discussion here, but man, I always forget like Q is the like direct result of a lot of people dying, so that's just that's something that I feel should have been a
Um,
little bit more acknowledged and treated. Like
18 people dying, but it does warn the Federation that the Borg are coming.
it's
So
18 people though. That's even one
yeah,
person
but
dying would be a bit too much. I understand like the lesson
yeah,
Q
but
is trying
here's
to
the
teach
thing.
them.
Here's the thing. Counterpoint. They were enlisted yellow shirts. Okay, the only one of those that's ever mattered was O'Brien.
Okay, I mean, yeah, I guess I get that, but I'm trying to like again, this is kind of where I have a lot of problems with Q. There's the weird meta element of it, and there's the weird like actual repercussions of how this godlike being should be treated. Like
Yeah.
it's very uncomfortable with Q, and I don't really like it. And we'll start the discussion of this episode. It actually starts off with a scene I do really like. So it starts off in the Rebel Mat. Bashir is talking about how phenomenal he is. He's chatting up this woman.
I.
I guess yeah, she's a Bajoran. He's
It's
a
just
Bajoran.
a
She's
random woman.
it's hard to tell on the. It's hard to tell a little bit on the feed. It's hard to see like the nose ridges, but I think she has the Bajoran earring. So he's talking about like, oh yeah, so I just. It sounds like he's talking about a surgery, but in reality, he's talking about his medical exams.
Yeah.
So that's like the joke. It's
Yeah.
like, I was fighting the toughest battle, looking around, hoping for a friendly face. Panic was building inside me, and I knew the only chance was to trust my instincts. So I reached down and clicked my answer, and the computer registered it as the correct one. And that's the stuff salutatorians are made of. Because yeah, this is kind of a running gag. He's salutatorian. He wasn't the top of his class because he mistook a preganglionic fiber for a postganglionic nerve during the orals, or I would have been valedictorian. It was a trick question. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, O'Brien is sitting behind them at a different table, just like rolling his eyes at how arrogant Bashir is. Like, I wish I could play it, but just like listening to Bashir talk about how phenomenal he is taking this medical exam is like, Oh my god, dude.
Yeah, the
Just
fact O'Brien is Irish, listening to the guy with the British accent go on and on, it's like, hmm,
it's
hmm.
it's it's it's
Okay,
it's
Brit.
it's absolutely it's absolutely just like a very silly. It's meant to be a very silly scene, and
Yeah,
uh, we've talked about it before. They do the retcon later in the series where we learn that Bashir is a genetically engineered human. His intelligence is far exceeding that which he presents himself with,
yeah,
and
and he
they
did. He made a mistake on purpose.
yeah, it kind of retcons this decision to he took the salutatorian position on purpose. I think
Yeah.
regardless of what he had gotten, he wanted to be stationed at DS9, so it didn't really matter what he took, like whether
Hmm.
valedictorian or salutatorian. He was going to probably get either any choice he wanted. But like, it's really just kind of like it recontextualizes this as did he get that wrong on purpose so that he doesn't appear too intelligent? Which I don't know if I necessarily agree with that notion because like
Hmm.
the valedictorian isn't genetically modified, presumably. So why couldn't he be the? Because supposedly he only got one question wrong, right? The valedictorian got like every question right. He got one question wrong and failed, right? So if he had just gotten every question right, I guess it would have like gone to a different like metric or measure. Like I don't know how
Yeah.
they measure. It could have been maybe they have a timing element to it. Maybe it's like he got that one question wrong in the orals, and maybe he lost 2 points for it, and meanwhile the valedictorian only had 1 point from a different question down. It doesn't really matter, but it's just one of those things where it's like, people who use this as an example for, oh, you see he's hiding his intelligence. It's like, I mean, no one suspects the valedictorian is genetically modified, so I don't know why he couldn't take it. But either way, it doesn't really matter. But
Hmm.
it's a funny
Hmm.
scene. So it's like they get a call and they have to report to landing pad 5. Bashir's like, oh, bad timing. The woman's like, it'll be another time. Meanwhile, again, O'Brien just sort of rolling his eyes at the scene, like, oh my god, you're just so full of yourself. Um,
And the final thing he says, Starfleet Medical Finals gets them every time.
oh yeah, that's
Uh,
right. It's like he's this is funny because we know for a fact that Bashir and O'Brien become like quite literally the best of friends, uh, real bros. But it really does start off with O'Brien really not liking Bashir, and that actually becomes a point in a
yeah.
later episode. We were just recently rewatching, or we were rewatching the episode. Was it the Vortex? No, it was Battle Lines, I think.
No, no, it's I know
Oh, the
which one it
storyteller. It
is.
was the storyteller. It was the storyteller.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the storyteller.
So,
Yeah.
and in that episode, we kind of learned that O'Brien doesn't like Bashir. So they basically are they're preface. This is one thing that's really nice about like early DS9, even early DS9. It's in throughout all of DS9. They really do build up like later plot lines through these little small interactions because
Hmm.
they could have had, oh yeah, this is the first time, like in the episode storyteller, this is the first time O'Brien and Bashir interact. Therefore, it's like, oh, we learn O'Brien doesn't like Bashir. But the fact that they have this like opening scene where they're just like, yeah, let's throw in a little bit of a tidbit here that sort of shows you that O'Brien doesn't like Bashir ahead of time. I think that's a pretty, that's just good
Hmm.
writing. It's like, hey, we're actually sort of forward thinking. We're not just going to drop a plot line down. We're just going to say, look, we're going to introduce a character in a small cameo, or we're going to have two characters interact in a small way. That's more indicative of how they act later on. And I think, they do it well. And as a result, it ends up being, something that like DS9 is often remembered for is that continuity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so they go to where they're told to go, and we find that what was happening here? Because the door's like jammed, and they can't get it open.
Yeah, there's
Because
some
it has like
damage
Kira
to
and
the
Cisco trying
ship.
to and
Yeah,
O'Brien
there's some damage
fixes
to
it. Oh yeah, there's some damage to the ship, and O'Brien needs to fix it to open the door, and then Bashir. They're worried people are injured, so that's why they called Bashir.
yeah,
I
because
think that's
like
what
life
happened.
sports. Yeah,
Oh
everything's
yeah, I
bad at the
recall.
moment.
Yeah, so they get into the ship. I mean, like, it just really like there's some good stuff of characters being competent and like sort of immediately jumping into a dangerous situation.
Hmm.
Uh, but let's see. We need to get the. I'm trying to see if there was any like details about like what information they found about her. I I don't think they could have done that.
Interesting,
Oh, Dax is on the
funny
ship as well.
thing.
Dax was escorting someone. That's because
Yeah,
she's also on the ship. And the first,
yeah.
when they immediately go in, Bashir like immediately checks on Dax. Maybe because he I don't know if that would be like standard procedure to
Wants
immediately
it.
check on the Starfleet personnel first. You know, I mean, yeah,
Hmm.
we know he likes Dax at this point in time, but I guess like
It's probably
I
just
guess
like whoever's closest, as long as no one else seems like obviously super injured. Like he's having
yeah, I
to
guess like
like
there'd be
figure.
yeah, I guess there'd just be a priority of it's like if you can get the Starfleet officer helped and recovered, they can then help deal with the situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Um.
I mean, it's probably just he went to the first person. I mean, maybe we probably read a little bit too into this, but Dax had found someone who'd been in the Gamma Quadrant for over 2 years. Now the wormhole just opened. Oh, I'm getting some feedback
Yeah.
from you, Pike. Oh no, it
Oh
seems to be
well.
gone now. It seems to be gone now. It's fine.
Mm.
So this is where it's revealed to be. Is I think it's Vash, right?
Vosh. Vash would be if it's Trigon. Vosh is how they say it here.
Yeah. So
Vosh.
it's Vosh, and this is a character who I think they appeared in 2 episodes of TNG,
At
and
least two, because we have the first time we meet her, which is the Ryza episode, and then there's the episode where Q's like, mm, mm, mm.
yeah. So the
But yeah,
episode was in Cupid, um, which it's really cool. I have the transcript in front of me, and when she says a friend dropped me off, it's actually a link to that episode. So that's a
yep.
nice little thing. Deep Space Nine transcripts, or I guess Star Trek transcripts. Thank you for that. So yeah, a little bit about her. She's an archaeologist, similar to Picard. Picard's also sort of a bit of an archaeologist himself. He likes studying
Hmm.
ancient alien cultures.
Hmm.
However, she's
Hmm.
in it for the
Hmm.
money. She's all about, it's like, oh, I'll find these ancient artifacts and then sell them to the highest bidder. And
Based.
she vanished with Q to go explore the galaxy because he found her interesting. Uh, I don't really feel like she's that interesting. I'm not gonna lie. Like she's an archaeologist who sells stuff for profit. I don't know why Q would find her fascinating. Like
Just saying a greedy little human. I don't know. Like,
I guess
I
I
guess
guess so.
that.
I guess like it makes sense why like Q was interested in Picard in a way because this is
Hmm.
the captain of the flagship of the Federation. He's the forerunner of humans basically. Like not the
Hmm.
forerunner. That's not the proper term. He's the front runner. He's the guy who he's the person in charge whenever they
Front
find a
man.
new culture. Yeah, he's
He just.
like unironically it would be Picard's probably one of the most interesting humans in Starfleet simply because of the position he's in, a position he earned, right? So
Hmm.
it's like the captain of any other starship is not going to be anywhere near as interesting, and a random scientist might be as interesting. But like this is a guy who's going around the galaxy, exploring, meeting new cultures, being a diplomat. So I understand why Q's interested in him. I remember even thinking during Cupid, I'm like, I don't get why Q finds this woman particularly interesting, other than she, she seems like an interesting character, but like Q's a god. So I'm just
When he's
like I
seen
feel
this
like you need to
so
be
many
something.
times, it's like, what's interesting about this particular iteration of
Yeah,
it? Like,
again, she's just an archaeologist for profit. It's not like there's like some sort of grander element. Like she's very intelligent. Don't get me wrong. She's intelligent. She's capable. Like she keeps up with Picard. That's kind of why she and Picard have an almost will they won't they sort of thing for the episodes where they're a little flirty back and forth. But
did they
I don't know.
not bang in the first one? I thought they
I
banged on his
I,
holiday.
I don't recall. Uh, it's
I mean, it's
probably
Ryza. Like, it's free game. Like, no regrets there. Okay, I'm just saying. Like,
yeah.
anyways, I
Rise is
will.
weird, but yeah. Go on
Yeah,
with what you're
I will
saying.
note an interesting thing here. So O'Brien's the one who makes us aware this is Vosh, and he's like Vosh, and it's like that's right, and that's right, and he's like, oh, Miles O'Brien for the Enterprise. The thing is, there's no real reason from what we've seen on screen for either of them to recognize each other just offhand because uh, O'Brien never had a scene with her back on TNG. Um, he did not appear in the 2 episodes he was in, and while he appeared in some of the episodes, this is something funny about Q here. While he appeared in the episodes that Q was in on TNG as well, it he never shared a scene with Q either. So it's just like O'Brien should not recognize Vosh, and like he might not be aware of what Q looks like.
Yeah, and speaking
Technically
of Q,
speaking.
as they rescue Vosh and as they rescue Dax, they leave the ship, and we see what looks like a Starfleet officer. First noting he's wearing the TNG uniform, working on the door,
Yeah.
and then it turns around and da it's Q,
John Delancey.
everyone's favorite being of chaos. Hopefully, I didn't trigger any sort of copyright flags. I was trying to get the exact moment he looks at the screen, but yeah. So Q's here. Isn't that fun? Isn't that interesting? We get the
It's John Delancey being
yeah. I
John
mean, he's
Delancey.
pretty good. Although you know, he's also in Picard. Although I'm told it's not really a great plot line, and I'm probably just gonna believe that because I'm not interested in watching Picard. You know, it's like this is a so it's funny because Q plays a pretty big role in like the last episode of TNG, the last two episodes,
Yeah,
and
because
he
it's
also
basically
plays
a
a pretty
bookend.
big role. Yeah, and he plays a pretty big role in Voyager. So
Yeah.
like he appears in I think 3 or 4 episodes in Voyager, and I always find
Yeah.
that to be a pretty big problem given the plotline of Voyager, where they really should be asking for Q to help more. But this is his only appearance in DS9, and I'm kind of happy about that. Again, not a huge fan of Q in terms of like what he kind of does for the series. You know, it's kind of like when you introduce this godlike character into the setting, a lot of stuff should be really like revolving around him as an entity. I
Yeah,
don't know.
like
It's
if we were to like write our own sci-fi thing, Hollis, I would very much, and we had a character like you, I would say like yeah, every season finale is a new test from him to like some sort of
that would be kind of
situation.
interesting. That would have always been interesting if like again, if I feel like if TNG was a little bit more like refined in terms of like its can or like its canonical, like if it was given more of a canonical nature, not canonical, that's not the proper term. If it was given more of a like
Continuity
uh
focused.
continuity focus, yeah, thank you. I was briefly thinking of the wrong C word. But if it was given more continuity focus, it would be very interesting if the end of every season was like a new test from Q that somehow reflects the challenges that they had faced that season. You know, if there was a lot of
Mm,
like episodes in a season that revolved around like the nature of justice, and then the final episode. Oop, getting some feedback again
mm-mm.
from you.
Yeah, sorry.
If it was reflecting that final episode of the season would be like Q giving some question on justice. That'd be kind of cool. That would be a neat little idea. But you know, it's like as it is, Q always just sort of showed up for a fun, wacky, zany plot line, and sometimes it played in something bigger. Most of the time, it didn't. But
Mm.
with here, you know, I mean, we'll get back to talking about it. With here, Q feels almost like an afterthought in the episode too, which is weird.
Yeah, I was actually looking into it. Originally, this was just supposed to be a Vosh episode, and they're like, we don't know what to focus this around, um, to like make it fit the runtime. And they're like, well, we had her go with Q, so I mean, we could tie that off and have an appearance by Q. And it's actually like, basically, John was like, yeah, I don't know how I feel about Q in this episode. Like, it's like it's very much like, yeah, I'm added because they need to just pad it. But he does say like, oh, I enjoyed working with Vosh's actress because they
Yeah.
had worked together before and they got along. And it's like, yeah, we gotta do this right because a lot of the interaction is those two and their
Look, we only have enough room in this series for one godlike alien species, and those are the wormhole aliens.
well, no, there's also the pod race.
No, those are like the devil to their godliness. So that's
Yeah,
just
are
it's
you?
the sort of same thing.
Uh,
Look,
I suppose heretic.
we'll get more into the whole prophet stuff, but at least with the prophets, right? Like the prophets are actually like they're like a I guess like a fifth dimensional being or something. They're a higher level than humans, and as a result, they don't know how to understand humans. Like they're very confused
Yeah,
just interacting with linear beings and like, oh, your time moves linearly. That's weird, and it actually takes like a lot for them to even consider getting involved. And usually, like they will only get involved when it directly results the physical space the wormhole like operates in. So I
yeah.
mean, I feel like this series handles the sort of godly nature of the prophets a little bit better. The prophets aren't like, shooting laser beams from the wormhole to deal with problems that the Bajorans have. It's no, no, no. Like if it aligns with their own goals of protecting the wormhole, they're kind of like they'll help. But otherwise, they're kind of more of a hands-off entity, whereas Q is a very hands-on entity.
Yeah, pretty
So,
much their only like things outside of the wormhole are like subtle little pushes to get to what the series ultimately is.
yeah,
And then the events within it. Like they
yeah,
don't like the most physical thing is you remember the reveal at the beginning of season
yeah. I
7.
don't want to. Yeah, we don't want to spoil too much from that. But yeah,
Yeah,
I know
that
what you mean with that.
that's the most physical, and even that they had to, you know, that situation with
Yeah,
family. It's like,
there's a cost to a lot of how they interact with the world. But with
yeah,
speaking of the events that are happening here, segue, we have Vosh in the infirmary, and she and Bashir are flirting with each other. Look, I agree, the actress is attractive. Holy crap, does everyone want to date her? Again, you have Picard, you have Q who's interested in her, you have Bashir who we know he's a horn dog, but we're gonna have Quark
she
later
was
on who's interested in her. But it's just like, man,
okay.
everyone likes Vosh.
Well, listen. In the fence, when it comes to those last two, they would hump a log that had tits on it. Okay, like let's be
That's
fair.
well, okay. I give Bashir a little bit more standards than Quark.
Eh, eh, eh. He
Bashir
was
seems to
down
like
for
the
a Dabo
chase.
girl. He was
Bashir seems
down
to
for a
like the
Dabo girl.
yes, but Bashir seems to like the chase. All right, he likes to
He
at
was
least
down for a
try.
Dabo girl.
Sometimes Dabo girls have high standards. But anyway, so Bashir has a little clever line where it's like, oh, you don't have any issues, and she's like, oh, you sound disappointed. And he's like, well, I don't get to keep you here. It's like there's some clever lines. Like I can get why they're kind of like she's like, oh, that was some good flirtatious dialogue. I get why she finds him a little bit like
Hmm.
interesting. But this might be does Bashir really do much else in this episode? I feel like he doesn't. He's kind of like there's a lot of weird just side stuff in this episode that is just like again, I don't feel a lot is really done.
Hmm.
But then we have the
It's
scene
just
where Cisco basically is like, "Look, I need to debrief you guys and figure out what happened here." So you have Cisco talking to Dax, trying to figure out like, okay, we're surprised that there's a human in the Gamma Quadrant and she's been there for 2 years. That's not really something that should be possible. We need to figure out what happened to her. Uh, and then again, Dax is like, oh, well, she claims to be an archaeologist. They're really just kind of trying to get us caught up on what happened in the TNG episode,
yeah,
which,
which
admittedly, someone might not have. I don't know why anyone would necessarily go back and rewatch that episode, particularly. And also, some people might not have actually seen the TNG episode if they're just starting Star Trek with DS9. So,
yeah,
they have to
which
kind of
is not
explain,
how
like,
you
what
should do
happened.
it. Thanks, Hollis,
So,
for making me start with
I'm
DS9.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I gave you the best part of all of it before any other.
And then it was all down here hill from here. Thanks,
Hey, there's some
buddy.
good
Thanks.
episodes in TNG.
Yeah, I need to get
I would
around
say I
to
would get around to what?
uh I need to get around to actually finishing Enterprise, but uh uh
I need to
uh
get around to watching the movies. I've never watched like the Star Trek movies, like the TNG ones and the original series ones. I've always heard like mixed things. Like no one seems to agree on which ones are good and which ones are bad, and I'm kind of just like, all right, I'm kind of good
uh,
then.
the
Like
situation with the originals are evens are good, odds are bad. There's a little disagreement there with one of the odd ones, but um pretty
that's really fun.
much
That's really funny. The idea of like, guys, we're doing Star Trek 3. Oh, so this one's a bad one. Got it. It's like when they're making it, they know it's going to be like a bad one. Meanwhile, it's like, guys, we're doing Star Trek 4. Bring your A game.
uh yeah, I like the it's just one of those things of just like um movies be movies, and I know like I've seen them because I actually uh watched them recently with my uncle. Uh well, not recently, but I'm like, yeah, these are good. I'm not big on them, but they're good. Um, for the TOS ones. Meanwhile, TNG, I'm just like, I'll be honest. I don't. Well, I need to watch Generations actually now because it has Kirk and I want to wrap that up. But eh, eh.
Yeah, I mean, like
And
it's one of those
Nemesis
things where
because
for me, it's like I think with and we probably should stop getting off on these side tangents, but who cares? With me, it's like like when TNG was over, I was like, that's it. I'm good. Like I don't need any more. You know, and by that I
mhm,
meant like I felt like that was a good bookend for the characters. So when you're like, oh, by the way,
yeah,
we're gonna have movies with them, I'm like, I mean, okay, like I guess that's fine. Like it's not like they died at the end of the series, but it's just a matter of like when you have these movies, it's like, oh, well, do these movies are these movies like particularly good or play a big role in the story? It's like not really. They're kind of a lot of standalone adventures, and I'm like, okay,
um, so
like I know like the inter because here's the
Nemesis,
thing, there's actually a plot line how one of the movies resolves for DS9. That's how Worf kind of shows up.
yeah, Generations, I believe, has Enterprise destroyed. And then Nemesis is important because that's where Data dies, and all the shit with the Romulans. But
I've been told that
unless
Data
you go,
dies. I've been told that Data dies in Picard.
no, so no, I actually know this. So that's a copy. That's not our data technically. The data that we knew died in Nemesis,
Well,
and
he's
technically,
in all fairness, couldn't you theory like just say like, look, if you copy over the data, like okay, but it could just be a copy. But
because
if
it's
you
a
move
separate
over the
agent.
actual, well, if you move over the only copy, like if you move a file from one folder to the other as opposed to copying it from one folder to the other,
So no, because
that's
it
probably a
wasn't
question
a
we shouldn't
copy
be
taken
talking
from.
about here.
No, so I'm gonna argue no, it's not the same data because that was not a copy taken from the exact moment where he died. It was a little bit before. But I think it was like if I know Picard, it was like the result of Maddox's like research into him. Because Data did agree to like sort of help as long as he's not taken apart. But basically
You,
that's a separate data and like sort of the point that is made of him is like it's a good point. I would argue of like he wants to be human, and now that this data, part of that is like having the experience of death finally being let go, but I want to move on and see you know that sort of thing.
yeah, you can
But
tell how
it
great
is a
this episode is by how much we're talking about other stuff.
well, it connects like we go on tangents because it's like, well, this connects
No,
to that. This connect.
I know, but it's kind of like I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of stuff that just sort of happens in this episode, and it's like, yeah, it's not like poorly written, but it's like, to get us a little bit back on track. It's like
Yeah,
this next episode is Vosh checking stuff into a bank, and it's like, okay, I mean, like, I guess so.
yeah.
Like, so, like,
When we did
she's
watch it, you made the point of like, what? How does he know like the measurement without any measuring tools? Like 31
oh yeah,
centimeters
so
tall? How do you know?
they do this thing where like she goes to this bank and she's like, yeah, I have some items to deposit, and she deposit like they show like, oh yeah, it's transporter proof, it's blaster proof, or phaser proof, and then she pulls out all the objects, and this sort of serves as like a let's talk about all the items she gets. He talks about these like objects he pulls out, and he's like, it's like, oh, stone statue, 30 odd centimeters tall. I'm like 8 kilograms. I'm like, that's a really quick, accurate assessment of like its size without any measuring tools. But also, I'm not gonna lie, you don't know where this is from. You say it's stone,
Yeah.
but like stone from where? Like stone from Earth? Stone from
What?
an alien planet where the stone is like living tissue or something? Like Star Trek is a weird universe, man. So it's just like I don't feel like you could just say what the material's made of without tests.
Well, here's another thing. Like immediately, like they know her reputation. Immediately, it's like, okay, where did you get this? Where's the bill of receipt? That sort of thing. That should immediately come
Well,
up because
in all
it's
fairness,
like,
like I don't. First off, like this would be a bank where you store objects. They probably no, they would probably care about stolen items.
yeah, because that's what an assay office is for. It's basically a place
Yeah,
to
they don't.
like
Well,
in
they
our
don't know where
world.
she is. They don't know. Like they might not know who she is. She's been gone for 2 years, and she's not necessarily like super famous. It's like
True.
remember
You
the
would
literal
think.
previous scene. Well, remember the literal previous scene is Dask and Cisco trying to figure out how she got to that galaxy. They don't know enough about her. They're like, we know, like
Hmm.
Dax even says she claims to be an archaeologist, so they don't know she's an archaeologist. She just claims she's one, right? So
Hmm.
they're not even sure about her profession. And it's like, I
Mm.
guess like especially on the frontier world, this could just be a bank that doesn't care where you like. Yeah, like our sale is like, look, we will protect your items. We don't care where you got them or anything. That is our like
But that
disclaimer.
the problem is this is an assay office. An assay office, at least in our world, is basically you are supposed to deposit items there. Basically that you can confirm like, oh, this is a a. What they do here is they test the purity of precious metals to make sure consumers aren't duped into buying fake items. So they're actually supposed to be concerned with authenticity. It's
Yeah.
weird. It's yeah. It's weird.
Well, the next thing he's like, oh yeah, you have a sword of gems, a necklace of bronze and gold, and then like the more important thing is she pulls out like some sort of weird object that is like, ah yes, I've never seen anything quite like it. It appears to be some kind of Promethean quartz. I thought you just said you'd never seen anything like it.
It might be a case of like he's just drawing
Well, it's just it's like here's the thing that ends up becoming the weird item, the plot relevant item of
MacGuffin.
the episode. So, well, I don't think it would be technically a MacGuffin because well, we know what it is eventually, but that's a different conversation. I just find this very weird, where it's like, okay, random stone statue, random necklace, random gems. Ooh, this thing that looks like a large gem. It's quite interesting, possibly even plot relevant. Okay, moving
Hmm.
on. It's like that feels like what the scene's for. Is we need a scene to introduce the item that's plot relevant. Here, let's have this guy talk about how great it looks, and then kind of just ignore
Hmm.
everything else. It's just funny to me. Like it's weird.
Yeah.
So one thing I think is really kind of dumb is she puts like a little thumb scan, like they do like a DNA bioscan sort of thing, like an eye scan to make sure. All right, a lot of security measures, right? And then she
Hmm.
walks like 5 feet out of this office, and she's immediately on the promenade. Like I'm trying to get like the
Yeah.
actual like show this image. She's in the room with the vaults, and then she walks out, and she's on the promenade. There is this is supposed to be like a super protective vault thing. Yeah, it's protected from transporters, it's protected from phasers. You gotta have all these security measures. By the way, it's also a studio set and it goes right onto the promenade.
Yeah. Like let's be fair. Have we had the episode with the that talked about Odo and Kira's past? It's mostly Odo's
Uh,
past, but Kira.
Not really.
Okay, we have not had that episode yet. Okay, so here's the thing. We find out there that Rom breaks into stuff pretty easily, and it's like, huh,
Yeah,
huh.
like this is it's just weird, right? Because you'd expect there to be like a big vault door and then to lead into a series of offices and then you have to like walk through this past security guards, you know,
Hmm.
to get here. And even okay, even if it's like okay, it's a super sci-fi vault, it's actually impossible to get into. You still wouldn't want it to be like, you're walking down the
Yeah,
promenade, you take a slight left turn, and oh, you're in the vault now. Like it's
yeah,
weird that that's how they show because they could have done a cut of her walking into a hallway and then another cut of her walking onto the promenade. And the idea there is like, okay, yeah, between there was like a series of like doors and offices that like prevented people from just walking into this vault. But she walks immediately onto the promenade, and it's funny because like I'm looking at the transcript of this episode, it does say the scene takes place in the promenade, so this isn't like a room that looks like the promenade or something like that.
nope,
It's the
it's the
promenade.
promenade. Yep.
Yeah, and this is another odd scene because there's a line in it that I feel a little. It's almost ignored. So Cisco talks about like, oh, the Daystrom Institute will be disappointed that to hear or let's see, the scientists are like, oh yeah, like the scientists are anxious to hear about your life in the Gamma Quadrant, and you're not really willing to talk about it slash, you know, give your goods away or like bring your goods to museums for study.
Hmm.
And she's like, oh, it's gonna be, and then Cisco interrupts her saying, oh yeah, it's a personal matter. Uh, let's see,
Hmm.
let's. Oh yeah, Vosh talks about how the Daystrom Institute's interested in me. It's somewhat ironic because they suspended her membership there from the archaeological council because of how, her
Yeah,
being like
because
all about the sort of money and probably selling objects illegally. Oh
she
yeah, for the
did.
sale
Yep.
of illegal artifacts. Yeah, and let's see. Oh yeah, Cisco talks about a professor's hoping to make you an exception in this case to maybe bring her back into the Daystrom Institute. And
Yeah.
oh no, they're talking about like oh yeah they're interested in you now, and they're hoping that you'll make an
Oh, she
exception in
was
this case
hoping. Yeah.
not to sell your stuff. Uh, he's like she's and then Vosh is like I haven't been back to Earth in like 12 years, and Cisco's like I can arrange a passage, and she's like I'd like that. Now she
Yeah.
doesn't act this way
Like,
for the rest of the episode.
yeah.
It almost seems like
Like,
she's sort of teetering on the cusp of like, is this really the life I want? Like, because if you had this idea of like this is who she was, 2 years go by traveling with Q in the Gamma Quadrant, and suddenly she's kind of like, all right, you know what? I'm kind of done. I'm kind of done with the
yeah.
adventure. I'm kind of done with the excitement. Let me go teach an archaeology class at the Daystrom Institute, and like live a nice cushy life there.
It's
Which
like
again,
this. She was a thrill junkie, but then Q broke her of that.
yeah, like
Oh,
he broke the barometer, and now she's just like, I just want a nice easy life. That's what that scene seems like. That's kind of completely ignored for the rest of the episode.
yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
it's just again, it's weird. This episode has like a lot of like, it feels like it was almost written by two people sometimes, where it's like
Um,
there's this one element of hey, we're dealing with the Vosh trying to like come to terms with like what's going on. We have Q kind of here, but not really. Like again, we're almost how far are we into the episode? I mean, we're about. Oh, that doesn't really show me an accurate reading.
at
We're
most
about
a
like a fourth of the
fourth.
way. We're about a fourth of the way through the episode. Q's only made a background appearance,
Yeah.
so it's very weird. Let's see. Oh yeah, this is where we get a more background for like O'Brien's talking about Vosh and how she and Picard were friends, close friends, if you follow my meaning. Uh, again, he mentions like seems they met on Ryza a few years back,
Any link to the
which
episode.
yeah, and that actually that references the episode Captain's Holiday
Oh,
from TNG.
O'Brien also does mention like there's nothing seemingly wrong with the ship. Like he's mentioning like, oh, there's like stuff empty and such, but nothing's damaged. Like once
Yeah,
we like refuel them, it's all fine. It's like, I wonder why. Looks
yeah.
at you.
I mean, I guess that's nice of the murderer to be like, I'll fix the ship.
Yeah.
But
Well, no,
let's
no,
see.
no. So it's their ship. It's the Ganges. Or
No, I know that's what
I
I mean. He's like, I'll fix their ship for him. It's like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's see. I'm
Well,
trying to like,
it's their runabout, the Ganges. Like it's so basically, what happened in the setup was apparently Jackson, that ensign, went in Gamma Quadrant in the Ganges, found Vosh, brought her back, and it seems to be Q tried to stop him. Q tried to stop him without killing them, and it didn't work. Like tried to spook them,
yeah,
and yeah, just yeah, it's
you know,
hmm.
and
Hmm.
this is another thing where I just find it very weird. Where O'Brien's like, I think she must be a special woman, being friends with the captain and all. Uh,
Hmm.
and then like Cisco's like, she doesn't really seem like his type, and O'Brien's like, yeah, the captain likes a good challenge, sir. Which is like, first off,
Hmm.
that doesn't really seem like Picard. I don't know. Like, I get like he likes a challenge, but when it comes to like courting women, I don't know if I viewed him as someone who's like he was up for the chase,
The
not the.
only kind he likes to court are his dead best friend's wife.
Yeah, but
And then
and
Picard's like, no.
oh yeah, so this is where we get like the idea that something is like causing energy drains throughout the station,
Hmm.
and like they basically had like there was a graviton flux around the transfer systems. I remember we talked about like, man, there's a lot of just techno babble here. Detecting low level
Yeah.
graviton disturbance. It's like so this then Dax brings up that's exactly what happened to the uh the Ganji ship. And actually, this is I think you were a little bit wrong about the whole Q trying to stop them because we learned what's causing these power
Right.
fluctuations.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
They
little
blame
confusing.
it
They never
on
actually.
Cube.
Yeah, they blame it on Q, but we learned that it's whatever's causing these things. And they're current, like I guess a little bit of a spoiler here, but the episode's a bit
It's that
jumbled as it
court
is.
thing.
Yeah, the quartz thing is what's causing the problem, and but they all blame Q for it when they learn that it's Q here. So it's a bit odd, but then we have a scene where O'Brien's showing the Vosh the quarters. Let's see. I mean, like she asks about Picard. Uh, he says like last time I saw him, he was fine. It's like it's a scene that doesn't really do that much. Again, part of it is it's so focused on a character we're never gonna really see again. This is her last
Mm-hmm.
episode.
Yep.
She gets comfortable in the room, and hey, Q shows up to cause problems, and she's just not happy he's here. She's very clearly not
Yeah.
liking him. Let's see. She's talking about like, oh, I left you, you didn't leave me. Uh, he's like, oh, what was it? Oh yeah, he's like, you left me, I left you. Details, details. Like, it is just like Q sort of playing coy with her
Yeah,
and
it's like,
trying to be like,
let's work
isn't it
back
fun when I threw you
together.
around
Let's
in these horrible things? Yeah.
Holy shit. Oh man, I'm more
What?
and more understanding Bosch's like point of view. It's like, holy shit. Listen, it's just details, details. Let's get back together. Wasn't it fun? It's like these were traumatic. It's like, huh. Like now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, yeah, Bosch is in the right here. Like, holy like Q really like even before he does anything in this episode, it's like, yeah, yeah.
Well, like he talks about
That's
all the stuff that he brought her on, and like some of it sounds like legitimately dangerous, like collapsing stars and things like that. And like she's kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of done. And he's like, yo, 2 years in the Gamma Quadrant, that's hardly a grand tour of the universe. We got the Delta Quadrant, we have other galaxies. And she's like, look, I want you out of my life. You're arrogant, you're overbearing, and you think you know everything. And the Q's like, well, I do know everything, which he's right. Um,
well, no,
I
he
mean,
doesn't
like,
have knowledge of the future.
well, the joke is right. Is she's like, he's like, I do know everything, and she's like, that makes it even worse. Like something just happened between them. It's weird, and oh yeah, like you're the one who almost got me killed on Arcane 7. They weren't exactly they weren't exactly thrilled to see you on Brax either. They called you the god of lies, and he's like, they meant it affectionately. It's like it's funny to hear Q deal with this, but it's also kind of just like I get why she's not happy about like a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Like like me hearing all this, I'm just like, oh my god, this was an abusive
Uh,
relationship. Oh
well, I mean, and you
lord.
think it's like uncomfortable. He like shoves her on the bed and like looms over her, and then like she shoves him
Yeah.
back. Like, I mean, let's be fair. He's a god, borderline. He could kind of just do whatever he wants. The fact that he's shoving her doesn't really mean much when he could just like snap his fingers and erase her from existence. But it's still kind of like you're really showing him being like really overbearing and like weird about like a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, this is why more and more I'm just like, I don't now I'm remembering why like I never think of this as a good Q episode. It's
Well,
like,
anyway, it's funny. So Quark shows up at the door, and immediately Q. Hold on, I want to like read the lines as they happen. So Quark enters the bottle. He's like, "I," and Q says, "Go away," and Quark like immediately like vanishes like between frames.
yeah,
And then she's like, "Bring him
bring
back
him
this
back.
instant." And Quark is just like really kind of confused, but he's like, "Oh, my name's Quark, by the way. I brought you this gift." Immediately he's in like, You know what? I don't know where I just was, but I'm here to woo a woman.
I actually, Q being based, what business could you possibly have with that disgusting little troll?
True,
Pretty
true.
based.
It's pretty funny. Admittedly, all of his experience would be from TNG if he had any from them. So,
Oh God, that's right. TNG Ferengi. Ugh.
anyway, so I mean, like, not too much happens here. Quark is like trying to woo her, like she's kind of playing along, and then she kind of like they start talking about business, and like, oh yeah, like I can help sell you some stuff and get you some like I can help sell your stuff, and she's kind of like entertaining the idea. She gives him Umox, which I think is the first reference of Umox.
Um,
Which it's I think it's
maybe.
I think it's well I think if it was mentioned before it's implied to be like a sex thing. It's definitely very like pleasurable for Ferengi.
The
It's an
act
ear
of
massage.
massaging the ears. Yeah, there's
Yes,
no translation for
it's
the
an
word.
well, there's a translation. It's an act for massaging the ears. That's the translation. But it's like it's like, oh, she does that and she gets a better deal from it, which is I don't know, that makes just Quark seem like a bad businessman. Like,
Oh no, this is not the first reference to it. It first came up, I think, in Menage. Troy. A TNG episode where Ferengi kidnapped Riker and Deanna and her mom.
Okay,
Neat.
I mean, like I could see it being mentioned in TNG, but I think this might have been the first time it was shown
Yeah,
because they
perhaps.
focus a lot on it, and it's like, oh, she basically uses this to get a better deal. Let's
Hmm.
see. He's like, oh yeah, because originally he wants like 50-50 split, and she's like, that's obviously unreasonable. She starts massaging his ears. She's like, all right, 30, and then she starts complimenting him. He's like, okay, 22, and I'm like, Quark is shown to be a great businessman. The fact that he's this easily manipulated, kind of, I don't like it. You know, it's
Well,
like,
no. It's fine. It's fine because normally when he's negotiating with somebody, it's a man, and he doesn't have to worry about Umok. He'll just focus on the man. Um,
that's true. That's true. But
actually,
uh,
here's the thing, though. I think this is also like while we could say that he's being taken advantage of in this way, I feel like he knows where his actual because you never start at your actual like price, right?
yeah, I mean,
It's
I
like
guess it's just like it's just a degree of like he's just selling the stuff. So theoretically, he would just get like a 20% or something like that. And he obviously pushed for 50-50 when she could probably sell it on her own. So he's kind of
yeah,
like,
but it would be
this is
more
mostly like a setup for the auction fee.
yeah.
Because when we get to the auction, she sells the stuff. She tries to sell the stuff herself, so it's not like he was doing it. Although, admittedly, he needs to be the one who ends up helping.
Yeah, because she has
So
no idea how to sell to prior collectors of this nature,
yeah, and then
which
she
is
dismisses him as they like establish their deal. Q shows up, calls the guy vile. She tells him to go away as, hey, everyone's favorite doctor appears, Bashir. And, again, he's also trying to flirt with her. And like, the whole time, Q's, like, behind him, like, pulling funny faces and vanishing before he comes back.
hmm.
Again, it's like, this is just like a weird scene where it's like, oh, yeah, this is like every character flirts with Vasha, like, scene.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Although,
It's
admittedly, we have the next scene, which let's be fair, when it happened back in the '90s, I think it was probably okay, but nowadays it's just not cool. Q shows up and he has disguised himself to look like a Bajoran. He's in Bajoran face. I think it's very inappropriate. I think we should just kind of move
uh,
past it.
it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. He's not an elected official. He's not like at this point. It's like it's one of those things. Like if it was like Cisco doing it, okay, there's a problem. Now, to be fair, he does appear in Klingon face later on, but this is Q. We can't stop him. He's just gonna do it.
That's true, but
He,
he shows up with the nose bridges and the earring and dressed as like a Bajoran, and it's almost like funny. Like he's playing such a joke on Bashir, and he's telling Bashir to stay away from Vosh. Uh, and cute, like Bashir's just
Mhm.
like confused because he's like, "You're very what's the word he uses? Impertinent
Impertinent.
waiter." Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and Q's like, "Look, I'm giving you friendly advice. She's nothing but trouble." And then he like basically like casts a weird Q spell and makes Bashir tired. Bashir goes to
Are
sleep for
you
the rest
sure
of
you're
the
feeling
episode.
up to it? You out of the plot.
Yeah,
Out of the plot. We're bored with
it's
you.
it's just funny. But this is where O'Brien sees him for the first time. Like he recognizes Q, and he's just like, "Oh hell." Q doesn't recognize him,
Yeah.
which is a point you made before. But it's like, yeah, this actually kind of allows a little bit of the interaction to go on because, yeah, like Q doesn't know that he's been made.
He's been identified.
All right. Well,
I do
let's see here.
like O'Brien, like, we got a problem, sir. I just saw Q on the promenade. Cisco, Q here, Kira. What's Q?
Yeah,
Just,
I mean, like it's fair. She would have no idea what he is. Presumably, like the information of Q has only been spread throughout Starfleet, not throughout the whole Federation. Because, holy crap, if everyone knew Q existed, that would be chaotic.
yeah.
There'd probably be entire religions devoted to him within days,
Well, to be
and then
fair,
he'd
he's
probably
already known
torture
as the
those
god of
people.
lies.
Well, yeah, to like one
He's already,
planet, right?
well, yeah, but it's still one planet. Come on, like,
Well, yeah,
have
but
some
it's one planet in
respect.
the Gamma Quadrant.
Yeah, but like, come on, Alex. Like, why you gotta be
Well, I
this
get.
way to him?
Look, I guess I just mean that, like, if a single planet came forward and was like, "Hey guys, we have our god. He's the god of lies and mischief and other stuff." People be like, "Oh, your planet and your silly culture." Meanwhile, it's like if the Federation came forward, it's like, "Okay, so we just had an interaction with a godlike being." Everyone would just panic. Everyone would be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, so you know that Borg threat that we're all constantly living under? Can he do something about that?" Yes, but he refuses to. It's like, oh,
Oh no.
like maybe we should make like elect someone who can get him to do that. I don't know, but so they
I mean,
explain
that's
like
why
what
we
he
got
is,
the card.
and this is where they kind of suspect that Q is the one playing his jokes on draining the systems of the station. Uh,
Yeah.
let's see. I'm trying to like see if there was anything like important mentioned in the scene other than it's O'Brien and Cisco discussing Q, and I mean that's fair. I think this is the first time it's mentioned that the whole Federation has basically been debriefed on what Q is and how to address him and how to handle the situation. Before
Yeah.
it was just the Enterprise dealing with him, but it's like no, no, no. Like Picard would have made reports, and the Federation would have had to take like precautions if he ever appeared to any other ships. So I think that's pretty appropriate. Uh, and this is where we get
Mhm.
the scene later on that I sort of showed earlier. We go to Quark's and we see Vosh trying to sell or like show all the items that she has to sell to Quark, and this is where I get a little bit like, okay, this is a little bit weird, right? So why did she put the items in that bank?
Um, for security, like just like,
I guess
hey,
like my,
I
my
don't
first
have.
issue is like no one knows you have this, right? So the fact that you're putting something in a bank is probably more questionable than like, oh yeah, I just keep something secret hidden in a bag under your room, or just always keep it on you or something. Like it's not the safest thing ever. But I guess like I bring this up because we see that she's now sitting in Quarks with this item, the valuable one, and
Hmm.
it's like, so you're just pulling it out and just like showing it around. You're not like some dude with a phaser could run up to you, grab it, and leave before even Odo's alerted.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's like, again, it's Quark and Vosh talking business. Quark is see, although now it's like they're basically trying to establish the value of these items, and he thinks, oh, this is worth like 7 bars of gold plus platinum. She's like, it's worth 50 times that. He's like, ridiculous. All right, 18, but you must swear never. Wait, no, now it actually sounds like, yeah, because I'm reading this. She's trying to sell the items to him,
Yeah. I think they're
which
like
is
trying to be
weird
like,
because
okay,
they were already talking about an auction. I guess like maybe there's a system where it's like she sells the items to him, and then he auctions them off. I
maybe
guess,
it might be a
but that
case
wouldn't
of
that wouldn't make sense
like,
for the splitting the profits though. It's again, this is just it's weird where it's like I don't know. And then it's like I don't know why. This is a very weird scene. I remember even like when we watched it, they're talking about like the price that should be set. But I don't know
Mhm.
why like Quark is mentioning about how he should never tell a soul about his generosity. I'm like, but you plan on selling this. You're even talking about later that it's like it starts at 200 bars of gold latinum. Um,
Yeah,
and then again, it's like he's just trying to flirt with her. Again, I don't know if this is a very good episode. I don't think it's bad. It's just like there's a lot of weird dialogue, and I feel like we're
it's a
not
C.
brought into the full picture.
It, yeah,
Cisco shows up looking at Vosh, and yep, this is where like he's like, yeah, I know you're interacting with Q, and then Q shows up. He's like, hey, it's me. I'll tell you anything you want to know.
the
Uh,
problem. Yep.
and then there's some good dialogue from Q here. Is Starfleet penalizing you, or do you actually request such a dismal command? Cisco's like, immediately, I want you off the station. Uh, which again, like, given that Cisco would be aware that 18 people died as a direct result of Q, it's like, yeah, I want him off this station too. Like, uh,
Yeah, just like, if you don't have actual business here, please leave us alone.
yeah.
Please.
Cisco does the few things like, oh, I must say, I approve the new Taylor, and he changes his outfit to be in the DS9 uniform. Which, look, I've said it before. I don't like the initial DS9 uniform. I prefer the Dominion War
Yeah,
uniform we get later on.
yeah.
I like. He's like, oh yeah, but this is almost them saying like, yeah, this new uniform is better. I'm like, I don't think it is. I don't. I feel like the old uniforms are a little bit more iconic, but whatever. Uh, Cisco's like, I'm not impressed with your parlor tricks, and I just have to sit here, like, sit Cisco down and be like, Cisco, they're not parlor tricks. He's actually a god. Like, these aren't like magical tricks of illusions. He could literally snap his fingers and obliterate a planet.
Yeah, but
Uh,
I think there's like a known thing of like Q doesn't necessarily respect people who are like, oh God. It's like he likes them a little feisty, if that makes
sure,
sense.
but I guess
And
I guess it's just more of an issue of like, calling him parlor tricks. Are you just trying to get him mad?
yeah, I
It's kind of like, I feel like the strategy when Q appears should always be, what do you have to do to stop to get Q to leave as soon as possible? And that
also
is like, not insulting him is probably the number one.
I'll well, to be fair, he's just like Cisco's being very clear and direct. He's not like it's a little rude, but it's like just straight up like I want you gone. I do not want to deal with you. Leave. Like
Yeah, and then
like
it's like, this is where like Cisco also brings up, like, I know you're screwing with the station, and maybe we should have a discussion privately. Instead of like going to a place that's private, he just vanished. Q just vanishes everyone from the room,
uh
which admittedly,
actually
it's it's a good effect.
before you go any further from that, you skipped a line of like where it's like, Cisco says, these power outages are going to stop right now. And Q's like, oh, yes, of course, go ahead. Blame Q if it makes you feel any better. I suppose it's my fate to be the galaxy's whipping boy. This is such a you sort of line. I'm going to be honest.
Heaviest
Because
is
you
the
put up
burden
with
of
a
being
lot.
me.
Yeah, this is a very you line because you have a lot to complain about.
I don't know. I
Like,
do. I'm pretty sure I have used the line. Heaviest is the burden of being me. Me, whose
yeah,
struggles are just the greatest of all. When it's like, yeah, like it's just it's a funny line, but yeah, it's a. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the acting in lines of Q are pretty well done in this episode. It's just a lot of the weird stuff surrounding it. Uh,
yeah,
like after all the people vanish, Cisco like grabs him, threatens him, and then this is where they get to the little boxing match. He slaps Cisco around a few times. Cisco refuses to fight. Admittedly, all the people are back and they're cheering now. Like Quark puts some
yeah.
money
Look,
down on Q. Uh,
Va no. Quark puts it on Cisco. Vosh says you're on. Uh,
oh yeah, that's
just
true. That's true. And then of course
like
Cisco just
this is
punches
supposed to be brutal.
and then Cisco just like punches Q, and he's like, Picard never hit me. I'm not Picard. He's like, fortunate for me, you're much easier to antagonize. And then he vanishes in like a flash of light. Um, yeah, and like it's just it's very weird. Uh, like I don't know, like because I don't know, like I felt like he liked Picard a lot more, but it sounds like he almost likes Cisco more. Oh, how fortunate for me that you're so much easier to annoy. I don't know.
Well, it's a
It's
case of
it's a bit
like
odd.
he'll be so Picard is very cool, collected. Like you can annoy him,
Yeah.
but it's hard to get him to do what you specifically want. I think they were like trying to set up like, oh, if Q does come back, it's specifically just to poke Cisco's buttons, rather than necessarily
Yeah,
like the
I guess
philosophy.
like, yeah, that's probably a good point. Like he kind of just likes screwing around with him. Um,
Yeah.
we get some like well dressed people to arrive for the auction. Let's see.
Hmm.
Again, more of these issues where they're like, oh yeah, the station's actually going to be in a lot of trouble. The emergency systems are functioning still, but they actually suffered a minor hull breach from an upper bulkhead because of these drained power systems. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's a problem with the station. Why does drained power cause like let's see. Oh no, it was I guess a decompression protocol didn't apply properly.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like that would happen on a space station, but you just feel like that would not be tied to any sort of. I guess if their power fluctuations, maybe something just exploded. Although I'm not gonna lie, some of these aliens are like kind of interesting. I mean, it's probably to save on budget. Like one of the aliens that comes for the auction, they just wear like these blue bags on their heads.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Went down
I don't think it's
to
like. I don't
they
think it's
stole them from
weird.
Walmart.
Oh, and then Odo's like standing there in the security office. He's like, not again. Like, oh god, he is. Oh no, he's talking about the power outage because again, the power in the whole station just vanishes. Admittedly, gravity never seems to cease functioning, but let's not talk about
Huh.
that.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Um,
Let's not talk about
yeah. So let's see. It's more of just them trying to deal with a lot of this like techno stuff that doesn't
that.
seem to
Uh-huh.
be. They do have, I guess, an interesting little effect, although it's crazy. There's literally a hole in the side of the station that Dax and Cisco are standing next to, and you see an energy field. Like, oh yeah, we have an energy field to sort of block decompression. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I wouldn't stand next to that hole without a spacesuit.
Yeah, because at any point the power could flicker and
I feel like that would just be
don't
like
hold your breath, you'll
protocol.
explode.
Yeah, I feel like that would just be protocol. It's like, yeah, you don't ever stand next to like an open breach, like ever. Like it's like, but sir, we have all these energy fields. It's like, yeah, no, sorry. Uh,
Yeah,
oh, and then this is
no,
where like
no.
Cisco's like he doesn't think Q's behind this. Playing with the lights, punching holes in the hull doesn't strike me as his style, which is like I guess it's fair, but again, it just sort of points at like this is a weird like plot where it's like, oh, we think it's Q, and then immediately it's like it's probably not Q though.
Yeah, which I think is like just like I said, like Q was added sort of like as oh, we need something to pad out the episode. And it's like, okay, like yeah, technically he's related to Vosh. So it's like, oh, this started when Vosh appeared and Q is there and Q does willy nilly things. But Cisco kind of like it's not his style. Plus, it's like, oh, was he on the Ganges? Well, in character, like in the show, they don't know he was on the Ganges, and so it's
Yeah.
just yeah,
Well, we do get a
yeah.
really good episode, or not a really good episode, a really good scene next of Quark and Odo, my favorite duo. And Odo is basically like called Quark in, being like, "Look, I know what you're doing, and know what you're screwing around with." Quark's like, "Look, I have nothing to hide. I'm just selling some merchandise." And Odo's basically just trying to figure out like, what is it that these people are on the station for? What are you up to? It's Quark, so it must be illegal. And Quark is like, "You can't prove anything." And then Odo's like, I'll never understand the obsession with accumulating material wealth. You spend your entire life plotting and scheming to acquire more and more possessions until your living areas are bustling with useless junk. Then you die, your relatives sell everything, and the cycle starts all over again. Now, that is probably like an Odo way of looking at it, but he's saying this to a Ferengi. So the Ferengi fully
Yeah,
believe your place in heaven is decided by how much wealth you have when you die.
yeah, but he may not know that yet. He may not
True,
know
that's
that yet.
true. But I feel like that's something that Quark should counter with. Although, admittedly, Quark does counter with a pretty good thing. It's like, is there anything that you desire? Oh, it's like, I have my work. What more do I need? And Quark like throws out a few random items until he finally touches upon how about a latinum plated bucket to sleep in? Because Odo sleeps in a bucket, and Odo like seems to consider it for a second, like, maybe, and then dismisses the idea.
Which
I don't
this
know.
brings up the question: what? Because the Latinum issue, because it's like, okay, you
Yeah.
keep them in gold brick strips and such. So are they like the only Latinum we ever see is liquid form at well, no, it was in a certain someone's body, so maybe it would
Well,
cool down.
so I
I
mean, like,
don't know.
here's the thing: the way it has always been implied is that latinum is a liquid that can't be replicated, which is like okay, fair.
Hmm.
And they put it in gold as a means of storing it. And the joke is like, oh, you can replicate gold, so gold has no value in this galaxy. And that's kind of
Hmm.
almost like the joke is like, oh man, this thing that in real life we value highly is literally just a container for the real valuable thing. It's kind of a joke there, but I guess it kind of makes some sense. Maybe gold is
Hmm.
such a it doesn't have any negative interactions with gold, where it might have negative interactions with other materials. And
Yeah.
but like, yeah, what does it mean to have a latinum plated bucket? Like latinum is a
Yeah.
liquid, and even if it's not a liquid, it seems to have like I don't. It's not like a metal. So
Yeah.
you like what would it be? Again, I just don't think at this point in time, maybe even ever, they were 100% sold on what exactly is latinum. It's kind of like it's kind of a MacGuffin word. It's something that everyone wants, but it's never explained exactly what it is because Star Trek is always kind of a little bit about that, where we don't really explain some of the stuff so that it can't be contradicted and questioned. And again,
Hmm.
this is also like Star Trek has never had a very comfortable like understanding of how money should function in this galaxy. in part because Roddenberry was like, "Oh yeah, the Federation, they've moved past money. It's space commies, but they're post scarcity, so it's fine." And it's like, okay, but then for some reason they wanted to introduce money into plot lines, and it's like, okay, but like, why? Like, you need some
Mhm.
value for money. I was actually gonna say this. I don't know why. You brought it up before. It's kind of like she's a thrill junkie, but
Yeah,
why does she care about the amount of money she gets for this stuff when she kind of seems to plan on living in the Federation for the rest of her life?
yeah,
I mean, maybe she
yeah.
just wants
J-
money because she's deep down she's greedy and she wants to buy stuff that you can't get through the Federation legal means. But it's just kind of like, all right. I mean, I don't really know if there's too much in terms of like value in selling these items that you full. I mean, maybe that's just the reward for it. It's like however much I can get for this, it sort of like shows that my risk was worth it. It's almost like a
Yeah.
pride thing. It's like points in a video game. It's like I did something dangerous and then got all this latinum for it. It's like, what are you spending the latinum on? I don't know. Probably nothing because there's
Mm.
nothing to buy in the Federation. I don't know. It's just that's just weird. But I don't know. I liked the scene with Odo and Quark. I felt like it was a pretty good scene. They had like a funny little the funny little joke at Odo's expense. And let's see. Oh yeah, then we get to Q talking to Vosh again. I keep saying Vash, but Vosh, and he's basically at this point. It's like, look, if you don't join me, I'm gonna do some horrible things to you. He snaps his fingers and she gets covered in like boils. And then she
Yeah,
gets no. He snaps his fingers and she like her hair starts to vanish. Uh, oh no! So what he's specifically doing is he's basically giving her the conditions she would have gotten were it not for him. It's like, do you remember the insect bites from Eris Prime? If I hadn't been there, and then like shows that her hairline's receding, and then it's like, the galaxy's a dangerous place on your own. She gets these nasty boils, and then he like snaps his fingers, and she's like dying on the floor. Like her whole body looks like she's like aged and like sickly. And then he snaps his
yeah.
fingers, and it's gone again.
So counterpoint. If not for him, she wouldn't have this shit. Literally
True, she
all
wouldn't
her
have been. She
problem.
wouldn't have been on those. She would not have been on those planets were it not for him. And also, I'm not gonna lie. Like, if you're hanging out with a guy who can just get rid of all these problems, you're probably not taking a lot of the safety precautions.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, like, why do you need to worry about it? You have a guy who will just save your life. But she's trying to sell this stuff and get away from him. And again, that's all that scene's really for. It's like, yeah, we're just having this scene where it's like Q's being possessive again.
yeah,
Oh wait, this is the next scene. Uh, the next scene is the one where O'Brien and Q interact, I believe. No, so
yeah,
Q comes to the command center, and they're trying to figure out like what's going on with these power drains. Q shows up. It's like, oh, I can, you're still chasing your own tail. Picard and his lackeys would have solved this all this techno babble hours ago. No wonder you're not commanding the starship. Like, oof, trying to get under Cisco's skin.
ooh,
And
oof,
this is like where O'Brien is. Q's like, do I know you? He's like, O'Brien from the Enterprise. Like, oh yeah, were you one of the little people? Quite a motley crew you assembled here, Benji. My advice to you is evacuate now and save all this pointless guesswork. Let's see.
Also, a funny thing he does say when Kira calls security off, it's like, ooh, aren't we a feisty little go-getter? I'll keep my eyes on this one. Chances are she's after your job, referring to Cisco's job. It's like, technically, yeah. Eventually, yeah. Who becomes
Yeah,
commander when Cisco's gone? Kira. Kira.
yeah. I mean, like this is him trying to basically like screw with them. He's like, look, I'll tell you what's going on. While you're here conducting futile experiments, Vosh is below engaging in base commerce and setting Federation ethics back 200 years. How is it setting Federation ethics back? She's not part of the Federation.
Uh, but she is a human who has ties to Federation institutions.
Okay, but I
And
guess like she's been
it's
banned from
happening
those.
under. Yeah, but they're about to let her back in, and she's been let back in before, and yeah, it's one of those things. Plus, it's happening on a Federation-run station. Yeah, it's one of those things. Plus, like generally speaking, I think they're making a comment just like just about like profiteering through archaeology, which is in the modern day a big no that we try to clamp down on all the fucking time. Honestly, if he had said like, oh, he's setting back Federation and human ethics like by like 500 years, you know, that would be better because at this point, Hollis, would you agree that we've kind of figured out, like, yeah, we shouldn't, like, just be taking these things to sell them? Like, you know what I mean?
No,
Like,
no, I agree with that. It feels like so. This is him. This is Q trying to get her, trying to get them to realize that the problem is with what she's doing, because the real
yeah,
problem is that weird gem she brought on the station.
yep,
So he's kind of trying to point them in a not so subtle way in the right direction, but at the same time, it's like, again, she's not part of the Federation. There's plenty of humans that are not part of the Federation, and like, sure, there might be some people who associate humans with the Federation. They're like, if they see a human, their first assumption is, oh, you're part of the Federation, right? It's like,
hmm,
sure, but like, I just don't feel like it's not like stuff like this hasn't happened on the station before. Quark has plenty of these events. Like,
yeah,
so it's almost kind of like, I don't know how this is like that big of an issue. I don't know why they. And again, I don't think they immediately take his warning. So it's like, yeah, they're probably thinking like, yeah, it's not really our business. Like, this is not a Federation station. The Federation has a presence here, but technically it's in Bajoran space. You know,
hmm.
maybe they'd clamp down on it when Bajor joined the Federation and the station would be in Federation territory. But otherwise, it's like, no, it's kind of like
To be
a free.
fair, the Bajorans probably don't feel good about this either if they were to know, because, let's think about what the Cardassians probably did when it came to, like, Neo archaeological
Oh
discoveries
yeah, I
on
mean
Bajor
they.
during.
Yeah, I mean there's an episode later season that deals with like, oh, the archaeological struggles that like they're trying to do recovering from the occupation. But as it is now, it's just kind of like, this is a very weird, like, yeah, it's just it's him
Yeah.
trying to poke fun at them and they're not really biting. So the
Yeah.
next scene is we have all these aliens discussing like, the antiquities and the auction. Uh, Quark wants to make it a permanent partnership with Vosh. She's like, look, she wants to basically head back to Earth. Uh, Again, I guess she's just sort of looking at this as her final job before she goes back to Earth and does something else. Maybe she is
Hmm.
kind of taking into consideration what Cisco said, but it's like, wouldn't this kind of hurt your chances with any Daystrom Institute or anything else? Like, wouldn't you want to basically be like, yeah, I vanished for 2 years and I come back and I immediately start like doing exactly what it is I've been like reviled for before, and then I'm gonna retire? It's
I
like,
don't even know.
I don't. I mean, they're gonna know this is happening under the Federation's eye.
It's fine. It's fine.
Like, it's
200
just
years of Federation ethics gone.
again, it's like there's this weird uh, element here, uh, but then so they're back in the station. They're trying to figure out how to fix these like graviton field issues. So let's see. They're doing a sensor sweep. Let's see. Oh, they're being basically pulled towards the wormhole. So they
Hmm.
need to basically start the station's thrusters to offset the gravitational field like destabilization. And they're basically like, it's going to start tearing the station in half if they have to fight the gravitational thing. But if they're going for the wormhole, that's even worse. Because hell,
Yep.
even when runabouts go in there, it's a rough ride. So imagine if a whole station went in there.
Yep.
Yep. And let's
It's
see,
rough.
it's pretty rough. Back in now this is the auction scene, and Vosh is trying to sell these things, and she's basically going over. It's like, let me tell you a little bit about the history of the Gamma Quadrant, Vareth systems, and the interconnected and highly developed trade and communication network. And Quirk's like, what is it that you're doing? She's like, I'm trying to give this statue historical context. So, and she's like, okay, here, let me teach you how we do it out here in the frontier space. It's like, all right, this is the one of a kind Gamma Quadrant original. Can all be yours. Bidding starts at 10 bars of gold pressed latinum. Like, he immediately is like, ah, yes, scummy businessman mode, activate.
Hmm.
I remember, what do you think of that line as someone who likes history, where he's like, history's unimportant. Let me sell you this. It's one of a kind. It's rare. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
I mean, like in like like it's like this. You're expecting me to give him shit for doing that, but it's like, no, I'm with him on this because it's like you're trying to make a profit here. You're trying to sell. Remember, Hollow, I was technically a salesperson, and it's like, yeah, Like straight up, these people do not give a like.
No,
Let me put
I
it
guess
like
I
this.
get that, but like here's the thing: you're trying to sell historical artifacts, right? And I agree that Vosh was selling this in a very bad way. She was going on this very long tirade. Like, although I
Look at
imagine,
this neat thing that you can lord over other people. Like
I know,
unique.
but
And it's like
how are you gonna lure it over people? You're gonna have to explain what it
um
is. Like, if you talk about like anyone who has like a famous painting or anything like that, it's like, oh yeah, I own an original Rembrandt. It's like, okay, but like, unless people have a context
yeah,
for who
but here's the
Rembrandt
thing.
is,
Here's the
that
thing.
doesn't matter.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing. They want something unique, and they want to know why it's unique. But they need to know that it's unique first. That's
I
what
guess so. I guess it's like
because
they could probably look into it. Like, honestly, these
basically
things should
it's like
probably
this.
come with like a little manual. Like, this is what it is, and this is its value. These are the nice things you can say to your friends when you're showing it off.
No, no, no. I know how to explain this from a sales perspective. They have the problem of they need something unique. And then once you suggest a solution, they need the details of how it actually solves the problem. So he presents the solution. Like he says, "You've got this problem. I've got the solution." And it's like, okay, and then they can do like the details of like this is what it is, uh, and like it could have been a little bit better of like like it could have said, but to be fair, Vosh has already said what makes it unique, if that makes sense. So
No,
basically,
I
if
get it. I get it. I guess like I find this. I the joke is supposed to be, you know, she has all this. She deep down she does have this respect for archaeology, right? She's trying to make a profit,
hmm
but she respects the sort of the study of these ancient cultures, and she loves
hmm
learning about that stuff. Meanwhile, she's kind of realizing, man, I really am just selling it to people who just do not care about any of that. And
yeah,
Quark being the person who's like, "Yep, this is how you have to do it." And it's like, I get that's like the point they're trying to do, but as someone who's actually been to auctions for rare things, you do have to give a basic understanding of its context because that's why people want it. They want it so they can put a nice piece of artwork in their house, and then when they have their little wine parties, they're like, "Ah, yes, look at this amazing photograph of the like it's a one of a kind photo taken by Jurgen von Sloop, and he died right after he took this photo, and it's one of a kind. It's like that's what's valuable about these things, right? Is you buy them so that you can then talk about how it and look smart in front of your friends, right?
yeah,
And it's like other than that, it's like, oh, it's one of a kind. I'm like, okay, but like it looks like a stupid stone statue that you can replicate. Like you're gonna have to sell this. Like, and by sell it, I mean you're gonna have to tell people why they're gonna want this. And that means you're gonna have to give the context to it. I think it's a better commentary on just how bad she is at selling this stuff, even though that's her job. Like, I
hmm
don't get like how
hmm
she's like. It's funny that she's like, all right, I guess I'll give you historical context to this, and then she's blowing the sale, and it's like, but you've done this before, woman. Like, you're I don't know how you're
so
not better at selling this stuff.
I think in the past, I can't remember the details from TNG, but I think it was a case of like in the past she was more like she would be told, "I want this thing, go get it for me, girl." And it's like, you know what I mean? Like they
Yeah,
already.
I guess. I mean, it's just maybe she's just always been bad at selling it, and that's why she has to keep doing it. But I don't know. It's like, I mean, this is the first time we've seen her selling this stuff, right? We've always just been told she gets these archaeological things and then she sells them for profit. It's like, I mean, I guess it's
Yeah.
different from like an auctioneer and a buyer. Although, admittedly, they really failed to bring up because it's a bigger thing in Star Trek, like the collectors guilds. The people who are like, oh yeah, their whole thing is they find unique things in the galaxy. We saw one
Yeah.
on Lower Decks. We saw one in TNG. They're actually like an actual thing. Like they're all these people who, yeah, they basically collect these things and then show off to their friends. Oh yeah, I have the one of a kind phaser that Kirk used to kill this Klingon. It's like, oh my god, wow. Like yeah, that's the
Wow.
value they have in that is the historical context in these random items. But so yeah, like Vosh does have like a look over this, like she's almost disappointed in all these people here. Uh,
hmm
and again, like the station's falling apart. There's more techno babble of like, oh, if we got to transfer auxiliary power and reverse the diffusion destabilizers, it might make a difference. But yeah, it's just like it's sort of showing that something bad is happening. They don't know how to stop it. The station's in threat. Meanwhile, there's just this auction going on downstairs. Like, is there not a warning to the people
Auction.
in the state? Is there not a warning to the people in the station? Get to escape pods of your ships ASAP. Like the station's in danger.
What's the deal?
I mean, that's
There's
just like again,
profit
it's
in the
very weird.
wind.
This is something that you would see in other episodes where it's like, look, guys, we're able to hold the station back, but it's currently flying to the wormhole. We don't know what's causing it. Everyone needs to leave. Like you would be
Bye.
evacuating this station as fast as possible, but they're not even doing that, and it's a little weird. Uh,
Mm.
so yeah, they're selling more. They're selling more stuff. Like everything's falling apart, and let's see. Oh, they're starting to scan for like the weird. It's not radiation. It's
Baton or
what's
whatever. I don't know.
yeah, it's like the
I
graviton like radiation, like, and they're basically detecting its higher concentration as they go like throughout the station, and they find where it's
yeah.
located. Uh, oh, hold on. There is a scene we kind of skipped over where they're trying to sell some stuff, and Q. Oh, I hate to interrupt this thrilling display of naked avarice, but I thought all you want to know the station's hurtling towards its doom. Like they had to be told by Q that the station's about to like be destroyed. Uh,
Yeah. Just
and all the people are like starting to leave. Like, oh crap! Like we got to get out of here. The auction's closed. Uh,
oh, Vosh also
that
tried to be like, uh, another thing from that scene. Vosh is like, I didn't think I realized until this moment how evil you really are. You'd kill all these people to get even with me. And Q's like, the thought did occur to me, but it's enough trouble without me. It's like, yeah, Q just keeps getting blamed for this, and it's like, it's not Q's fault. It is not Q's fault. Now we can argue like, does he have a duty to save these people? But
oh, and like some people are still staying at the auction even though they've been told the station's gonna like explode.
yeah, that's
So
also just
again, it's just kind of like, oh, look how greedy these people are. I'm like, dude, I don't think they're suicidal though. Like, uh, so yeah, like the
yeah.
station's still falling apart, and then Dax manages to bring them, and it turns out, like, oh, it's this weird gem that you've been trying to sell this whole time. Because what are they trying to sell it for? There's like a price 300 anyone 300
Uh,
bars of gold pressed platinum 350. Yeah, they get up to 600 bars, and like Cork is like, oh my god. Oh no, they get up to 2500, and then Q starts entering. He's like 2501. Like he's just basically outbidding it to make this go on, and then at one point Q says a million, and Cork, he almost like faints. He's like
God.
a million bars of Latin. I'm like, dude, this is Q. He's not gonna pay it. Uh, they get to the thing.
Well,
They
yeah,
realize,
but he
oh
doesn't
no,
know. He does not know. He does not know. Quark
yeah,
does
that's true.
not know about.
He does not know. He does not know about Q. But anyway, this is the one another reason I'm not a huge fan of this episode. They find this. They find this thing. Dax points out that this little gem is what's causing all the radiation. So
Hmm.
Cisco just puts his badge on it and says, transport it off the station. It transports off the station and immediately turns into a weird space man or space. What do they call it? It's not a manatee, manta ray. It turns
Yeah.
into like a space manta ray and flies off into the wormhole. It's very beautiful. It's very pretty. Uh, and Cork's just like, all transactions are final. Everyone else is gonna still need to pay me. Like, so then then the
Yeah.
episode ends. Like the episode's kind of there's the scene with there's like a sort of after narration scene where Quark is talking to Vosh, figuring out what she's gonna do
There's
next.
a yeah, a little interaction with Q. Finally, he
Yeah, a
gives
little
up on
interaction with
it.
Q. Yeah, he's like, look, I'd be much happier poking around in the ruins of Tartarus 5. You'll regret it if you don't come with me. Uh, and she's like, look, he's like, all right, if you insist, but it's not going to be the same without you. When I look at a gas nebula, all I see is clouds of dust. Seeing the universe through your eyes, I was able to experience wonder. So I guess that they do sort of clarify why he finds her interesting, but like, wouldn't that be true for just almost any human?
Yeah,
Like
but
anyone
she's
who's
at
like an
that nice
explorer.
point. She's at that nice point where she has the training, but compared to Q, she's still innocent. Like she has
I
the
guess that's
training to.
sort of I guess that's sort
Yeah.
of true. And then she's like, "Look, I'm gonna miss you." Like she actually kind of admits, I'm gonna kind of miss you." He's like, maybe I'll drop in sometimes." And she's like, "Oh, I hope not." And Q vanishes from
Oh
DS9
fuck.
forever. And then
Yeah.
we have a funny scene where Bashir sort of comes in, stretches, yawns. He's like, "I feel like I'm gonna sleep for days."
Also, that fucking thing, like the thing that was causing the problem, really just does prove like sort of an issue, right? Because so did I tell you I've recently started trying to watch Babylon 5?
Yeah, you've mentioned it.
Uh, yeah. So first episode, they did something that I'm like, oh, like it comes up here now. I'm just like, when anyone comes onto their station, they get fucking scanned. And it's like, oh, is this an invasion of privacy? It's like, yes, but it's also a station where any like bomb that goes off is suddenly everything's in danger, right?
Yeah.
So, um, I really think like it's not like because we know they do scans of some kind. Like I feel like this would have been logged of like, hey, uh Vosh has like all these items and like they might know like, hey, this is getting off weird readings, it looks safe for now, but then it's you would think there'd be that process in place, you know what I mean, like a
No,
clear.
I 100% agree with you. I mean, like that's unfortunately just always been something in Star Trek where they're a little bit more like the sort of setting and tone of the series leaves it to be very like laissez-faire with how they handle like
Yeah.
sci-fi rules where yeah like and they do like scan ships I suppose a little bit when they come to the station, but
Hmm.
clearly like this woman's able to bring something, and it might not have been giving off the radiation and it started glowing more, but you're right, it's just kind of like there's some things where you're just like how do you allow this to happen at all. And
Odo, are you doing your job?
well,
Come
Odo,
on,
they
Odo.
probably have to stop Odo. They probably have to stop Odo from doing too much of his job. But it's like, yeah, this is a very weird episode. There's a lot of scenes, some of which don't go anywhere. Q is just kind of here. He's almost an incidental character in this episode. Again, he's not the one that causes the problem. You could write this whole episode without Q. It wouldn't be as good. I think his line delivery and the writing for his dialogue is really good, but
Yeah,
he
and
almost
the
doesn't belong in
interaction
this
is,
episode.
yeah,
And it's
because
almost
it's
like this
like,
is kind of the proof of concept that he doesn't work with this series, right? Without Picard, Q doesn't really work as well.
well, I don't necessarily agree with that. Because again, as I've brought up multiple times, it's like, oh, this was originally just for Vosh, but then they're like, we need to pad it out. And it's like, well, we had her with Q last time, so let's add him in. Like, I think you could have done some of the sort of morality play sort of stuff that Q did in TNG, but with Cisco instead of Picard, and see how like this crew reacts to it, like how they
Yeah.
put up with it. Like, I would be. Honestly, I would want to see an episode of where has to deal with Cisco, O'Brien, and Kira, or fuck Garrick. Like,
Yeah, I mean like again, there'd be an element of there's a lot you could do, but they were very clearly like not interested in bringing Q in. They didn't really utilize him in a way that I felt you could utilize Q. And
hmm
like again, you could write him out of the episode and just be like, yeah, Vosh brings a weird item to the station. It causes problems. They don't know what's causing it. Into the end of the episode, they find out what causes it. Like it wouldn't be as good, but every plot beat kind of still works. Q is almost just like dressing for this episode, and I think
hmm
that hurts it because he's kind of just this passive character in a story that's really should revolve around him when he's present. I don't feel
hmm
like there's really any standout character stuff. Like there's some good stuff with Quark, but Quark is kind of always good, so that's just the norm at this point. You know,
hmm hmm
I feel like so much of this episode focuses on a character that we're never going to see again, and I don't really feel particularly like it was done very well. So it feels very like this is another skippable episode. I do think it probably teeters towards a D. We're talking about like characters who make some really stupid decisions in some places. Like
Check
I don't feel like House. I don't.
everyone.
Well, not even just check everyone, right? It's like you know, like there's the how Cisco kind of handles Q is like very like this is his first time interacting with Q, right? If you go to the first episode of TNG where Picard is interacting with Q, it starts off with this reverence, right? This idea that all
Mhm,
right, this guy's very dangerous. We need to be careful. Like he treats Q as a threat, and then over the course of
mhm.
the series, Picard gets a lot more like willing to
Awesome.
fight Q on these issues. He's like, you
Yeah.
can't just come here and screw with my crew. And this is part because he's tired of Q's antics. Like he's kind of almost, and this again, this is both a problem with I think how they treat Q. They almost treat Q as if he's this cosmic nuisance. right? He shows
Hmm.
up, he causes problems, it's a pain in the butt for everybody, but ultimately it's not like an existential threat. Meanwhile, it's like no, no, no. Like as you discussed in this, the episode where he throws them to the Borg and the Borg kill 18 people. It's like that's directly Q's fault. He killed 18 people. He's not a nuisance anymore. He's a mass murderer. Like, and I don't feel like that's ever really addressed. I don't feel like
Technically
we should.
enabler of mass murder, but yeah, yeah,
Well, again,
enabler.
like they blame him for those deaths.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
regardless if he's an enabler or not, they blame him for the deaths. So they should be treating him like a mass murderer. Meanwhile, when he comes to the station, Cisco's like, "I want you to leave now." It's like, whoa, 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 whoa! You just told a godlike being who has shown that he is willing to cause people death. You just tried to threaten him. Like that should not be your first reaction, Cisco. Your first reaction should be, Q, I would really prefer it if you were not on the station. If you want to, is there a reason you need to be here? Like, you try and engage with him in a way that best gets him off the station as fast as possible. You wouldn't try and be
Hmm.
confrontational because being confrontational
Hmm.
would immediately result in problems if he decided it to be that way. The fact that he doesn't, that no one ends up dying is kind of a miracle, right? I mean,
Yeah,
he could literally snap his fingers and vanish people from existence, and it's like, yep, you can't stop him from doing that. So it's
yeah.
just weird. It's just weird. I mean, I don't feel like he really belongs in this episode. I don't feel like the episode kind of treats him as he should be treated, and I also feel like Vosh is not a great
Listen,
character. A lot of the lines and dialogue are very contradictory. It feels like this
yeah,
episode's written by like two people. One person who's like, "Oh, I want a plot that doesn't really involve Q." One person's like, "Well, we're gonna involve Q." It's like, "Oh, well, do we need to?"
yep.
Like, I almost
No,
think it would be more interesting if, like, yeah, Vosh shows up. Last time we saw her, she was whisked away by Q. Q never shows up in the episode, and there's almost this discussion of like, you lived with Q for 2 years. What the hell was that about? And she's like, yeah, eventually he just kind of ditched me, and I've been wandering the Gamma Quadrant ever since, and now I'm finally home.
yeah,
You can have a whole episode about like the nature of what happens when this godlike being whisks you away, but then it gets bored of you and throws you to the dogs. That could be an interesting episode, but
you're
it's not really
basically
about
just
the.
a you're basically just a retired companion of the Doctor at that point.
I
But
mean, kind of, yeah.
like,
Like, it's like, what do you do after the
uh,
Doctor? And I feel like one of my issues is like, what is if Vosh is the central character here? Everyone interacts with her. Bashir, Quark, Q, Cisco, like everyone interacts with Vosh. Did she have an arc? Like, it felt like her arc was like she seems to like lose, like she's lost something. Like she doesn't see the beauty in archaeology anymore. She sees what she can get money out of it. And then they sort of
mhm,
reinforce this with her trying to sell the item and talk about its historical context. And then she almost looks disappointed that no one cares and they just care about its monetary value, right? It's like is there?
yeah.
It feels like there's almost supposed to
But
be an
then she
arc here
goes
for
back to
her.
working with Quark at the end. Like it's
Yeah, I mean, like
yeah.
she sort of entertains the idea of working with Quark in the end, but also like I don't feel like she like learned anything from here. Like, oh, and she's off to the Daystrom Institute again. Do you think they're going to care that the first thing you did when you came back from the Gamma Quadrant is you sold off all the merchandise that you found there? Like, they're going to
Mm.
hear about that and they're going to immediately expel you again as they did last time. Like, it's weird. It's like I don't feel this episode understood what it was trying to do. There's like, hey guys,
It
we have
might
Vosh for
be
an
a
episode in
case.
Q.
Yeah, it might be a case of just like, oh, she's only really considering the Daystrom thing because it's like she doesn't know what she's gonna do. At first because she just got there, right? She just got there.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, Earth is sort of a safe haven, and I might as well pop in the Daystrom Institute, right? If they're
yeah.
offering.
I guess it
But
just sort of means like
once she
it feels
has
like
something to
she's
chase,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
like, it feels no, 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 no. I kind of interrupted you there, but yeah, I'm 100% agreeing with you. It feels like though she's at like an end of a journey where she's kind of realized the life she's lived is not really that rewarding, and
Hmm.
it doesn't really feel like they explore that enough, nor do they really follow it through, and that's kind of the crux of the episode. So again,
Yeah.
uh, I'm leaning towards maybe a C, maybe a D. It's not great. Uh, Honestly, this is again one of those episodes that is like you're really trying to pick up your feet, aren't you, DS9? You're really trying to figure out what to do. It's funny because we've praised the really good episodes as much as we can and talk about how great the whole series is. But at this point, I feel like we've gotten more episodes that are not great, and I know we have one more particular to come.
Uh, no, we've got two because after this is Dax, And then
No. I know. But I know we have one particular one that is just not going to be fun.
yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
so
Well, that's
that
just not gonna be fun because you lawyer man and me political science man are just gonna be like, no, 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 no. You do not get away
uh,
with that.
that's going to be a fun
God.
episode. I look forward to us talking about that one. But for now, I say we should just probably end it here. Uh, we ended up talking about this episode for almost 2 hours. Holy crap! But I guess a lot
Holy
of it ties
fuck.
back into TNG. A lot of it talks into the nature of what Q is as a character. And again, we got distracted with a lot of stuff. Overall,
Yeah.
not a phenomenal episode. Probably skip it unless you want to see Q. Even then, it's not really a Q episode. Just go back and watch
It's
TNG
not a
if you're
great
interested in
Q
Q.
episode. Or
Cool.
watch
All right.
Voyager. Voyager Q is better, like than
All right,
this.
all
Like
right. You know, as tradition, Pike, I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to stop recording just as you answer.
fuck you.
Wow, that was very rude. I can't believe you said that.
Give me your question. And let me answer it. I'll give an actual answer here.